Alrighty. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're really excited for our program tonight. I am not going to say a whole lot tonight. I'm just going to turn it over to Matthew because he's the one driving this show. But we are really excited to talk to you about a collaboration that happened a few years ago now. Just make sure that you are muted unless you have a question. If you have a question, feel free to just type it in the chat. And then we'll let you ask your question on screen. If you don't want to ask it on screen, you can send it to me privately, and then I can ask it. So feel free to ask questions and engage. We'd love to hear from you. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matthew, and he's going to get us started.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are talking about a very, very special collaboration that I got to be a part of 2 years ago now, which was the collaboration between the Canton Youth Symphony Advanced Orchestra and Ballet Le Rêve, a youth pre-professional ballet company in the Canton area, in which we collaborated to put on a 1-hour, 2-act version of Alice in Wonderland in ballet form at the Canton Palace Theater on October 28th of 2018. I am thrilled to be joined this evening by my collaborator in this project, Nurjan Kulibayev, who is now about to officially assume the title of ballet master with the Fort Wayne Ballet, professional ballet company in Fort Wayne, Indiana, as well as a dear, dear friend of mine, Dr. Zach Gulivoff-Davis. Zach and I were the first people that each other met on the first day of orientation at Mannes College of Music back when we started our master's degrees. And ever since that first encounter, we have had a wonderful, nearly 6-year friendship, which has included many fun times as well as many incredible musical performances. And Zach played an integral part in this ballet collaboration. So I'm thrilled to have both of these wonderful artists joining us tonight to tell you this incredible story. So I had been with the Canton Youth Symphony, with the Canton Symphony and Youth Symphony for about a year, almost one full season, when in April of 2018, I got an email from Jamie Mulder, who was the president of Ballet Le Rêve. And I was actually loosely aware of Ballet Le Rêve because the Canton Youth Symphony had done a collaboration previously with them under my predecessor before I had arrived. And they reached out to me on April 11th of 2018, asking if we would be interested in collaborating on a ballet version of Alice in Wonderland. So I sent this email around to my colleagues on the Canton Symphony staff. Hey guys, what do you think about this? I got a lot of positive responses. Oh yeah, we did an incredible collaboration with these guys at the Onesto Hotel a couple years ago. They're a great group of people to work with. Let's go for this. So I thought it was a fantastic idea. It was a totally unique thing. I had never conducted a ballet, and I thought it would be a really cool experience on a lot of fronts for the kids, as well, for the youth symphony kids, as well as, of course, for the ballet students who would be getting to perform a fully staged ballet with full orchestra. So on May 16th, we had an internal meeting to discuss the logistics, to discuss from our end what we were thinking, where this could go, how we could make it happen. And then on May 30th, we had a meeting with the ballet powers that be. I believe Nurjan was not at the very first meeting. I think he was busy that day, but we had a meeting with the president of the company, as well as with a few other people on the board and the people that were going to be involved in producing this production. So we had a very productive meeting on May 30th. And we decided we were going to shoot for a performance in late October or early November at the Palace Theater, and that we were going to, starting then, we're going to lay out essentially the outline of what we wanted this production to look like, the scenes. We all seen the Disney movie of Alice in Wonderland. All of us knew the story. And so we set out deciding which scenes were going to make it into our ballet. So we had a great meeting on May 30th, and from that meeting, we came up with, I'm going to share my screen if Rachel will quickly enable screen sharing. Beautiful. We came up with this outline of Alice in Wonderland. That these were the scenes we wanted to include. So 2 acts, we had in mind 2 acts, about an hour of music, and each act approximately a half hour, and these were the scenes we wanted. So you see Alice and her sister, of course, before any of the craziness in Wonderland happens, Alice meeting the White Rabbit, falling down the rabbit hole, landing, seeing the eat me, drink me cookies and drink that make her grow big and grow really small, going into Wonderland, meeting all the various creatures of Wonderland, the caterpillar, the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, and then in Act 2, of course, heading to the castle of the Queen of Hearts, where she meets the Queen. They play a rigged game of croquet. The Queen declares off with her head, and somehow, by the magic of Disney, all ends up working out in the end anyway. So this was our first draft of the ballet. And we thought about it a little bit. We discussed it a little bit more, thought about maybe we wanted this scene, that scene. Throughout the process also, some days Nurjan would just send me an email or give me a call and be like, hey, you know, I really want to incorporate, we would love to incorporate another group of dancers. Is there any way that we could get a short 2-minute piece to put between this scene and this scene? And so we went from this draft to our final draft, which looks like this. And give me a second, I'll pull up the final. Final draft ended up looking like this. Hang on a second. Let's try that again. Sorry, the technology is failing me a little bit here. Okay, I'm gonna have to pass on sharing that one, unfortunately. Essentially, it was pretty close to the original, but the biggest differences were that Nurjan's studio at the time, Ballet Le Rêve, had a program for very, very young dancers. And originally, we hadn't incorporated them, and we ended up adding a few numbers to incorporate the really, really young ones. Generally, easier music that would, with a steady beat that would be nice and simple for them to dance to, and they ended up just totally stealing the show with the parents. And we flipped around the order of a few scenes, but by and large, it stayed fairly consistent. So that was our meeting on May 30th, and then I had basically from June 1st until around Labor Day, when Ballet Le Rêve rehearsals would start up, and when Canton Youth Symphony rehearsals would start up, to pick the music that was going to set this ballet. So this was a really cool exercise for me, because I had to pick 1 hour of music that was going to set each of these scenes that we had decided, and it had to be playable by youth musicians. So I was constrained by that. I was also constrained by, could I download this music online legally for free? Was it in the public domain? Or did the Canton Symphony own it in the library? In which case, public domain or not, I could use it in our ballet. So I looked at the list of what was in the Canton Symphony Library, and I racked my brain of my own knowledge of orchestral music. And one more consideration was I wanted, if possible, to have a stylistically varied selection, because it would be interesting to listen to, and also it would be a very unique educational experience for the members of the Youth Symphony, who would get to play a wider variety of music than I could ever imagine fitting in for them in a concert or even a season. Typically, the advanced orchestra plays full, large, longer classical works, full symphonies, or works of similar magnitude. And so to be able to fit in 3 to 5 minute excerpts from a bunch of different pieces was a really, really interesting and unique opportunity for me from an educational perspective for the Youth Symphony. So I racked my brain, and I have this very, very convoluted spreadsheet that I used to help me come up with the music that I wanted to use. So I put the scenes on the left-hand column here. In the comments section, I have a few things about the type of music we were going for. And then idea 1, idea 2, idea 3, and then the length, the approximate length of the scene. So I basically just racked my brain and regurgitated onto this spreadsheet as many ideas as I could think that might fit this music. And eventually I settled on the pieces that you see in bold. So the first scene for Alice and her sister, I wanted something that would really help to establish the mood of the piece. And Alice in Wonderland is a fairy tale type story. It's a magical story. And the overture to Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel, another fairy tale that began with this sort of magical aura about it. Beautiful horn chorale to open it up, and then the rest of the orchestra eventually joins. Just thought it would make a perfect opening. Nurjan and I decided after some discussion that we were going to open with just about a minute of the orchestra playing alone, sort of like a mini overture to the ballet, and then we would eventually, the dancers, Alice and her sister, would start dancing. So in addition to establishing the fairy tale aura of the piece, I was also going for a piece that would fit the scene of Alice and her sister sitting lazily under a tree on a beautiful sunny summer afternoon. So moving from there, all of this gets interrupted by the appearance of the White Rabbit. Now, for any of you who have seen the Disney movie, the White Rabbit is always running here, there, and everywhere singing, I'm late for a very important date. And the piece needed to be busy. The piece needed to sound frenetic. And the first thing that came to my mind, and I stuck right with it, was the Sabre Dance from Aram Khachaturian. All of you have probably heard of it. It's sort of a pop culture. You would recognize it if you heard it. Very, very famous piece. Just constant motion, perpetual motion, which just suited the White Rabbit perfectly. So from there, we came to a very interesting scene. She chases the White Rabbit and eventually falls down the rabbit hole. And at this point, we realized we needed some very, very specific music. She falls down the rabbit hole. We needed some sort of downward sweeping musical gesture that would signify her falling. She lands, she sees the door, she's too big to go through it, and she sees the bottle that says drink me and the cookies that say eat me. She starts out by eating the eat me cookies. She grows too big, even bigger. Then she drinks the bottle, shrinks to the right size, and goes through the door. So I figured some nice music to set her being very large and very small, I could come up with that. So I came up with Baron Oak's Waltz from Der Rosenkavalier. Baron Oakes is the bumbling antagonist. He's sort of a comic antagonist, always a heavy-set guy. He's like a guy in his 50s who wants to marry a girl who's 18, and the girl doesn't want to marry him at all, and he's sort of just like a bumbling buffoon of an antagonist. And he has this theme, this waltz theme that plays for him. And I just felt it would set large Alice, oversized Alice, perfectly. Then, of course, when she shrinks, She's very small, very docile, very dainty. I used the Scherzo from Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, which the strings play by plucking their instruments, playing what we call pizzicato the entire time. And I figured that the plucking would sound like a little tiny figure tiptoeing around and set small Alice perfectly. Now, to get between these, falling down the rabbit hole, growing after she eats the cookie, and shrinking after she drinks the drink, this is where Zach first came in. So Zach, I was wondering if you could say a few words about what you called your 3 transitions.
Absolutely. So I still remember the day I got the call from Matthew asking me to do this, because I had never done anything of the sort at all. I pretty much, before this, had only written pretty much absolute music, just music for the sake of music without some sort of, extra musical narrative. The one caveat to that was I loved composing art songs. I loved having some sort of narrative to work off of. If it's a really strong poem, excuse the rain, it just started to pour here. But if it's a really strong poem, you have half your work done for you. And that's exactly what the case was with this. I got this amazing spreadsheet that Matthew was alluding to and showing you that literally spelled out everything that needed to happen. So it was almost like by introducing these parameters and saying, at the beginning of this transition, we have to have this, downward sweeping motion and then the contraction and these different things, I was able to tailor my music to those. And again, instead of acting like a limitation, it really opened up a lot of things because I had these preset parameters to go off of. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach. So Zach composed the transitions between these various pieces, as well as once the Tchaikovsky was over, the moment Alice opens the door and walks into Wonderland for the first time. And again, I wanted to try to highlight the magical, otherworldly aspects of being in Wonderland. And there was no better composer or style to do this with than the Impressionist style of Claude Debussy. So I picked the middle section, the most lush lyrical section of his famous orchestral tone poem, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, to set this moment. As you can see in the spreadsheet here, I did consider the Hansel and Gretel overture for the moment she arrives in Wonderland as well, but ultimately decided that that was better suited to open the whole piece and then the Debussy for this part. So the next scene is actually not on this selection of the spreadsheet. The next scene, we had the Dance of the Flowers and the Butterflies. I guess it was added a little bit later in the process, but we ended up using Johann Strauss Jr.'s Tales from the Vienna Woods Waltz. And again, the Vienna woods open the door into this woody, magical glen. Also, it's a waltz. It's in 3/4 time. It's in a steady 3/4 time. And some of the dancers, the flowers in this scene, were young kids. So we needed something that would have a steady beat that they could easily pick up on and dance to. The next scene was probably one of my favorites that I picked of the entire piece. Alice meeting the caterpillar. If you remember, the caterpillar sits on his leaf and smokes a hookah and blows letter-shaped smoke rings. So a hookah, for those of you who don't know, a hookah is a way to vaporize a tobacco product through a water chamber that sort of filters it, and then you sort of smoke, you inhale the vapor, and it sort of bubbles around in the water chamber. And the Saint-Saëns Carnival of the Animals aquarium movement, the piano represents the bubbling of the fish in the aquarium, and I thought that the bubbling of the fish could easily be translated to the bubbling of the hookah that the caterpillar smokes. So I just loved the sound effect to set the caterpillar's character and how certainly at least how he's portrayed in the movie. We didn't have a hookah on stage in the production, but for anyone who saw the movie, hopefully they were potentially able to make that connection. The next scene was the Dance of the Mushrooms. This was another scene that was added a little bit later, again, to incorporate the younger kids. So we needed, something at a steady beat that would be very easy for the kids to dance to. And so I picked a march. For any of you who know me, Ralph Vaughan Williams is my favorite composer in the world, has been for a long time. And I was able to sneak in a short little gem of his for this piece, the March Past of the Kitchen Utensils from the Wasps' Aristophanic Suite, a suite he wrote as incidental music to a performance of Aristophanes' The Wasps. Delightful little piece. Next scene, Alice meets the Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter is a little off his rocker, and I wanted to pick a little music that would fit the off his rocker aspect of the Mad Hatter. The king of musical sarcasm in the 20th century was Dmitri Shostakovich. And I had really wanted, in particular, I really wanted to do a Shostakovich piece with the kids, but they're very large and they're very technically challenging. So it was a wonderful opportunity to get at least a little exposure to Shostakovich in there in this ballet. I picked the Scherzo from his Fifth Symphony, which take a listen if you can, the second movement of the Fifth Symphony. It just, the sarcasm and sort of like wonkiness of the piece set the Mad Hatter's entry perfectly. Mad Hatter's Tea Party was the next scene, and I wanted this one to be a total romp. I initially thought of Champagne's Delicious Bubbles, the Champagne chorus from Johann Strauss Jr.'s opera Die Fledermaus. Essentially, it takes place at a party where the champagne is being passed around and it's sung several times through, and each time everyone's a little bit more tipsy and merriment all around. The one problem with this piece was that it was a little too short. Even with 3 repeats, it just didn't quite come out time-wise to where we wanted it to come out. I then thought, well, if I can't use the Champagne chorus, who else writes romp, fun, comic music? None other than Sir Arthur Sullivan in the music he wrote for his comic operas with William Schwenk Gilbert. Gilbert and Sullivan. If you've ever seen The Pirates of Penzance or heard of it, you know who Gilbert and Sullivan are. So when Strauss was too short, I turned to Gilbert and Sullivan, and I ended up settling on the overture to his operetta Patience, which has a similarly paced, fun, fast, happy, party atmosphere sound of a ditty. So I ended up settling on the fast section of the overture to Patience for the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and we had absolutely delightful costumes. Some of the dancers had tables. They basically wore tables around themselves with teacups and saucers glued to them, and they spun around, and it was just totally fun.
Hey, Matthew.
So, yes, do we have a question?
Oh, well, a couple people are asking if you can sing more of the examples of music so they can get an idea of what it's like. If it's easy to sing, that is. Okay.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that.
You don't have to do much.
Okay, I'll do that from here on out. So the Tea Party was this fun little thing that went super fun, fast, bouncy, great. Now, the last scene of Act 1 was the Cheshire Cat. And if you remember from the movie, the Cheshire Cat appears in parts. His eyes appear first, his smile appears, his tail appears, and eventually you see the whole thing. So we needed, again, very, very specific music for this. The exact moments when the eyes, smile, tail, all of that would appear. There were light projections that appeared on the back of the stage, and eventually the dancer who played the Cheshire Cat came out and danced with Alice. So I once again turned to Zach, and he will tell you a little bit about the music he wrote for the Cheshire Cat.
Thank you. This was by far the most fun of these scenes to compose because I got to do the whole thing. It wasn't, you know, a bridge between 2 other works or whatever. I got to compose a self-contained work, which ended up being I think a bit over 3 minutes. So it was this little standalone waltz. And when I conceived of the piece, looking at all these very specific directions that Matthew was talking about, I sort of thought of it as this continuous crescendo going towards this sort of dramatic, slightly off-kilter, eerie waltz at the very end. And yeah, I worked really hard to include features that would be recognizable to coincide with the dance and the projections. So, for example, where the cat's tail appears, I believe I had this sort of undulating gesture in the woodwinds to show that. And then after we actually put it all together, we realized that it would help even more if I coincided some of those with a suspended cymbal hit. So it just added an extra little bit of flash when those happened. In terms of how this sounded, I could actually probably sing the opening of it if I can.
I think I could too, actually, but you go ahead, Zach.
Matthew's amazing. He can remember, he's conducted like dozens of pieces of mine almost, that he can remember the melody of every single one. Not to put you on the spot, but.
Well, this one opens something like da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da, dee-dum, dee-da-da-da, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then that just blossoms more and more until the melody sort of becomes a lot more continuous. There's fewer rests at the very sort of climax, and then it dies away in a whisper. Thank you.
So the act, absolutely. Thank you, Zach. And Zach, say what you told me yesterday about sort of the life of its own that this piece has now taken on.
Right. So like I mentioned, this was the only standalone work I composed. So I thought after I wrote it, this does, function as a standalone piece. So why not see if it can take on a life beyond this? And given that it was written for youth orchestra musicians in mind, it had a very sort of wide, spectrum that it could be marketed to. And yeah, so a couple other youth orchestras and a community orchestra have picked it up. Sadly, some of those didn't come to fruition quite yet because of the pandemic, but it's always very fun as a composer to see projects like this, born out of these amazing collaborations, go on to have a totally separate and independent future. So I'm eternally grateful to everyone on this project for, allowing that to happen.
All right, so the Zach's theme for the Cheshire Cat marked our intermission. And when we came back, we had a brief hip hop dance. The ballet studio also had a hip hop dance instructor in class. And so this was the one section the orchestra didn't play. Tweedledee and Tweedledum, who sing The Walrus and the Carpenter in the original Disney movie, they came on and did a dance to pre-recorded music. And from there, we got to the Queen's Castle and the entry of the cards, everything setting up the croquet game. So the cards, of course, are the wickets in the croquet game. They jump into the way of the Queen's ball and out of the way of Alice's in croquet. But the cards had to come in first. Again, incredible costumes, full-length card costumes for all of the dancers. Really, really creative. And I wanted this to be totally fun as well. And I turned to Julius Fujik and the entry of the Gladiators. It was a delightful march. It's, you've heard it, I'll sing a little bit. That piece. Circus music, essentially, and fit perfectly for the cards. From the cards, we go to the Queen. And of course, royalty is usually introduced with some kind of fanfare, but she's an evil queen, she's an imposing queen, and I had the idea to use the very beginning of Uranus from Gustav Holst's The Planets, which opens with a very imposing brass statement. Sounds bum, 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 like that. Sort of a royal figure is here, but an intimidating one. Then we changed around a little bit. We went to Carmen's Act 1 aria, the Habanera from Georges Bizet's Carmen. There's a wonderful orchestral suite of the music from Carmen, and so you can perform it without singers. And so it worked perfectly as a sultry minor key dance for the Queen. But in the aria, she basically sings, "If I have my eyes on you, beware." And that was sort of the idea we wanted for the Queen as well. It's very famous. It goes, dum bum 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 ba bum 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 ba dum bum ba ba da dum ba dum bum ba. That one. So the Queen danced. Next, we had the scene of the painting roses red, the white roses being painted red. And for this scene, we had some young dancers as before, so we needed some steady beat music. The scene was about painting white roses so they became red roses. And for the life of me, the only music that would stick with me was once again Sir Arthur Sullivan, the opening chorus to the Gondoliers, one of his comic operas. And the reason I thought of it was the opening line is literally, "List and learn ye dainty roses, roses white and roses red." So even though we didn't have the lyrics, it fit very, very well with the scene that was going on. It sounds, "List and learn ye dainty roses, roses white and roses red." Again, we didn't have the words, but that was the music. This is a little bit out of order because the next thing that happened was the dance of the Flamingos. We had to get the Flamingos, which are the mallets for the croquet game, on stage. And for this, again, I wanted to keep somewhat of an intimidating, because the Queen and all of that and cheating in croquet. So I went with a minor key march for this. Edward Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance March number 2, a lot less well known than the Pomp and Circumstance March number 1, which you hear every year at graduations. The March number 2 is the only minor key Pomp and Circumstance March. It's a lot of fun and was great for the Flamingos. It has a nice fast part for the violins going like that for the Flamingos to come in. Then we had our croquet game. Wanted it to be a romp. We got hedgehogs being struck by flamingos going through giant oversized cards as wickets, and we wanted another totally fun piece. So I went with the Hoedown from Aaron Copland's Rodeo. It's what I think it was the only piece in the entire ballet that actually was written for a ballet as its original purpose. Everything else was a symphonic piece or an opera. And this was actually a ballet from the ballet Rodeo, a ballet about the Wild West. So very famous piece. You've probably heard of it. It goes bum ba dum ba ba da ba da ba dum bum 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 ba ba da ba da ba dum, like that. Very fun. Next, we have the trial, Off with Her Head. And this scene, I really threw a curveball at Nurjan and his dancers because I really felt the best thing I could think to use was Mars from Gustav Holst's The Planets. It's a very dark, imposing, menacing. Mars is the bringer of war in the piece, The Planets. So it's a very dark and imposing, menacing piece, and it builds from nothing to huge, the full orchestra playing very, very loud. So the tension and the drama of a trial would build and build and build throughout what we played. The one problem, or the curveball, is that it's in 5/4 time. So there are 5 beats in a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Typically, it's a lot easier when it's in 2, just 1, 2, 1, 2, left, right, or in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, left, right, left, right. But in 5, there's sort of an extra beat in there. It's almost like a peg-legged waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Either you can say a missing beat from 2 waltz bars or an extra beat from the march. So I threw a big curveball at Nurjan, but he was somehow able to choreograph it beautifully, and we made it work with the dancers as well. So all of this craziness, chaos is happening. The Queen is shouting off with her head. And fortunately for Alice, she wakes up, realizes it's all a dream, I went with some of the magical sounding music again, the very end of Richard Wagner's Siegfried Idol, gentle, beautiful piece he wrote for his son's birthday, his young son's birthday, for small orchestral forces as well. And again, a great way to expose the kids to a composer that might be very difficult to play for them if they played a whole piece. He typically wrote for very, very large orchestra, many more players than we would have or even ever dream of having. So it was a great place to expose the kids to the music of Wagner. So I had my selections. We had the music that was going to set this ballet. Now I had to get the music to Nurjan in a way that he could listen to it exactly as we were going to play it, and then create his choreography and implement it with his dancers. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how I did that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nurjan, and he is going to tell you a little bit about how he created the choreography and how he implements it with his dancers. So what you're seeing now is a program called Audacity. This is an audio editing software. And essentially, as I mentioned, we had, each scene was about 3 to 5 minutes. And so we have these pieces, but most of them were not playing the entire piece. We're only playing a part of it. So I needed, the dancers and Nurjan needed to hear exactly what they were going to be dancing to, of course, because they had to practice. We only had one rehearsal together the morning of the performance. So I took the original audio files for all of these pieces and I cut them down, edited them so that they would be able to, Nurjan would choreograph and the dancers could dance to them. So I pull one up in here and I've got the whole thing. I listen to it. I find the place where I want the audio to start. And I make a little cut here. Edit, clip boundaries, split, and we make a little cut in the clip. We can then delete the part we don't want, play through, okay, we want this, we want this, we want this, and here's the place we're going to stop. Let's say it's here. We're going to stop there, edit, clip boundaries, split, we delete the part at the end, and then we save this clip, and I email it off to Nurjan, and he can now start working on his choreography. So for each scene I just talked about, I had to take a large piece of music, put it into this program, cut around the parts that we needed, cut around, take the part that we did need, get rid of the extra stuff, save it again, and send it off. So that's how I was able to come up with the track that Nurjan worked with to choreograph the ballet with his dancers. And I will now turn it over to him so he can tell you a little bit about how he came up with what you saw on the stage.
Hello, everyone. I would like to say, when I got that music, I thought, wow, it was kind of Matthew did difficult job, and he because find the music and put it together, that was hardest part for ballet. I mean, you know, like you can create, you can do anything, you can dance, but find the music, cut that music, and find the perfect music for any dances. This is hardest thing. And when I got that music, I thought, first, this is a lot of work and I need to do that. I need to create whole ballet, and I didn't have that experience before, especially for little kids. And yes, it was fun, but when I saw that, I heard that music, every single music, I know he put a lot of his heart for that music, and I saw that every single piece of the music, he was thinking, oh, this is Rabbit, oh, this is Mad Hatter, oh, this is Trial. Oh, Trial, that was something. That Trial, that was hardest thing in the ballet. Counted this heart and put put the dance on that music. Oh, that was not easy, but it was fun. And I asked many times Matthew, what about the music? How I should count that? And he, of course, he helped, and we melt through back and forth, back and forth, and it was fun, and it wasn't easy, but I definitely remember that time. Yes, and what about choreography? The when music, like when some people, somewhat like Matthew, did that job, it's easy to create that dance. It's easy to create the anything, because if you find the music and didn't think about that music, oh, you found it and that's it, and you can create. Of course, that would be like exhausting, difficult. But Matthew found perfect music. I know it's like it's impossible to say perfect, but I think it was perfect for the Alice in Wonderland. I mean, definitely, and plus Zach created the music, and at I couldn't imagine how he created that piece, because it's, create the music, it's like different story. But for me, create the music for ballet, and especially now, and for ballet and kids who dance, we were so lucky to do that. Like, it's any company right now will pay so much money to create ballet with professional orchestra and symphony. I mean, right now the symphony, and plus to make new music for them, for that ballet, and you cannot see right now that much. And ballet Le Rêve and Turning Point, we were lucky, like Matthew did, and Zach, and I'm glad we had that thing. To create ballet, to create choreography on that music, it wasn't easy, because we had how many, like 3 months, right? It's 3, 4,
something like that. Yeah, it was. By the time it was all picked, we probably had 3 to 3.5 months.
Yeah, yes. and plus, like when Matthew said, like, about the cat, Cheshire cat, but that head, that tail, that smile, and I thought how that would be on the stage, because we cannot cut the person and put the leg and put the smile and put the head. And of course, we had people who, like I will say, the Miss Jen Hecker and Jamie Mulder, they did an incredible job with costume, with that, I mean, doors, because we had to show big doors, small doors, to show people, oh, that kind of, we have story, but we didn't have so much, I mean, time to create like in the movie, that's, oh, they had perfect scene. We had 3 doors, but I think people remember that thing, and I think we had great job. We did great job. I'm sorry about my English.
So something to note. We had 1 day in the theater.
Oh yeah,
and,
I remember that.
Yeah, so we were in the theater at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. on that morning, and we loaded the set in. We set the set up. We set the orchestra pit up. We had a dress rehearsal the first time that the dancers and the orchestra were performing together. We're rehearsing together. We had time essentially to have a run through and a few spot checks. We gave everybody lunch, and then the audience came in and we performed. We did strike and we loaded out. And by 6 o'clock, Zach and I were looking to grab a drink somewhere, and everywhere in downtown Canton was closed. So but it was a whirlwind day. I can't believe it was a miracle. As live performance, there's always some miracle that happens to make it happen. And it was a miracle. We did all of this stuff in one day.
Yeah.
Matthew,
And
I'm still amazed that was all in one day. I had no idea. It just literally happened. What were you going to say?
Sorry, I wanted to say the one thing. I remember that the music, and of course for kids, sometimes I wanted to make faster or slower, but I'm glad I danced before, and like I had professional career, and like I danced in theater with orchestra, with live orchestra, and I know how hard to play the music, you know, like on instrument, and sometimes I remember many questions I asked Matthew, could we do slower, could we do faster? But Matthew said it's impossible because you have kids and we have kids too, and that's why they cannot hold long and like to hold the note like ooh, it's too long or too fast, you know, to play. And I remember that so clear. And on stage, on rehearsal, it was same sound, I mean same tempo, very close tempo what Matthew sent that music. Do you remember that? And I surprised kids were playing same kind of tempo what we had, and probably maybe just a little bit was slower or faster, but sometimes it was too fast, and I thought, are they kids? I mean, they playing so fast. I remember that like this is youth company, youth symphony, not a professional, but they played so good. I mean, and
so Nurjan, tell us quickly, because there's one more thing I'm going to talk about with the music, but tell us a little bit just how you invent your choreography, how you create your choreography, how you come up with it, and then how you teach it to the kids.
You know, like I start to read the book again, and then I watched the movies, cartoons, and I was thinking, what would be fun not just for us, I mean for kids and for people who is sitting in auditorium, I mean, and watching that performance. And I think just simple clear ballet and no emotions, that would be not so interesting. And I came up like to do some funny things on stage, and that's why with Queen, like she's like she's angry person, she's important, but she's tough. But in the same moment, I wanted to show that Queen is still funny. Queen is a character. I mean, she's something else, but that's what I wanted to show. And and plus about Mad Hatter, I know like I wanted to show big head and not like and small person. I mean, not small person, smaller than head, a head, and that thing that helped a lot. You know, like I was thinking first about not the choreography. I was thinking about the people. I put myself on their side. What I would see on stage. That's what I'm thinking. Because sit and watch 1 hour and just variations. It's not interesting. I know, but and plus the music when you like singing ta 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 ta. I mean, I'm not a good singer, but if you heard the music, you can create something. It's like start to dancing inside, or all organized, like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And it was kind of like this. Yeah.
So do you write down somehow? Do you write down what the choreography is going to look like?
Yeah, yes, but of course I did. Especially I did with Tea Party. I remember I start draw that, oh, the tables will be like here, tables tables would dance, they not just, I mean, we had tables, sorry, we didn't have like one big table like in the movie or cartoon, and we create tables. And I think that was fun. Was it fun, right? Yes, it was.
It was awesome.
Yeah, and plus I recorded a lot. I recorded on the video, and then if I didn't like it, I changed. Of course, we didn't have so much time. I wish I had more, but I think we made it. We made it, and one rehearsal on stage, it was incredible.
As we said, Nurjan and I said after it was all over backstage, we said we created art together.
Yeah. I remember that. We created art. Yeah.
We created art. It was really an incredible experience at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the choreography, Nurjan was busy. Once I got him the music, he was busy coming up with the choreography as well as teaching it to the cast. So I had probably what was then the most labor-intensive part for me of this entire process, which was creating the score and parts that I was going to conduct off of and that the musicians of the orchestra were going to play off of. So I actually have the score with me here, and I essentially took all of these pieces. The score actually was kind of easy to make. I just took all these pieces, and the places where we had a cut, I would just make a big line and X out the rest of the music, as you can see. And that, I knew, okay, we're not playing that. I'm going to turn the page. So the score was easy in that regard. The parts were a lot harder. I wanted the parts to be as user-friendly as humanly possible. You're taking however many pieces of music I told you about when I was listing the pieces that we used in the ballet. All of those, different publishers, different editions. Some of them I could download online. Some of them I had to physically scan into the computer so that I could add them to the part book. So I wanted the part to be as user-friendly as possible. The way I created it, I started out with this template that I'm going to show you right here. So every orchestra part started with this template. I had a beautiful title page with Nurjan and my names on it. Ballet Le Rêve, Canton Youth Symphony Advanced Orchestra. I wanted it to look really professional. The contents with the list of the pieces. And then I just had a bunch of blank pages with the titles of the scenes at the top. And essentially, I would copy and paste the music. Once it was in either JPEG or PDF form on the computer, a format I could use digitally, I would copy and paste it directly into this document. So, for instance, here's the Down the Rabbit Hole, Eat Me, Drink Me scene. This is the scene that Zach composed music for. I basically took the parts that Zach sent me and copied them directly in here. So here's a violin part. I did a screenshot, and then I copied it into this Word document. So the way it comes in is like this. You can even see our faces on Zoom here. And what I had to do, I had to crop all of these imported pieces, crop them down so that all you saw was the music. And once it was cropped, I would, of course, make it big so that it was playable by a musician. And I had to do this for every single instrument's part, every single piece that went into this ballet. I think it was over 100 hours of work. It was really, had I truly known what I was getting myself into, I might have made it a little bit easier on myself. But at the end of the day, we created art, and I'm happy that we did it the way we did it. So I have here a finished violin part, and this is what it essentially looked like when it was all said and done. So you can see I added the instrument name in the top left corner of the part, and you have all of the pieces in here. This is the overture to Hansel and Gretel, the Sabre Dance. Oh, this page left blank intentionally. This is very important. The musicians of the orchestra have to turn their pages, and especially the violins play almost the entire time typically in an orchestra piece or a ballet or anything. So we did have separate scenes, separate pieces of music for each scene. So I used the ends of the scenes to make sure there were good page turns for the musicians. So if I left a page blank intentionally, it was so that they could turn the page and then the next scene would be on one page. So here's Zach's music that he wrote for the falling down the rabbit hole scene. These upward sweeping gestures you can see, that's she's eaten a cracker and she's growing big. And then this goes into the Rosenkavalier Baroque Waltz. So the Baroque Waltz cuts off a little bit earlier than where it actually ends. We decided to end it a little bit earlier than where it actually ends. And for that matter, it's from the opera Der Rosenkavalier, and it just continues into the next part of the opera. So I actually had to cover up using these white squares. I had to cover up the music that came after it so that the players would know to just continue directly on. So each time we got to the end of a piece, I had to insert these white squares into the parts. Again, it was every single part, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 4 horns, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, tuba, percussion, piano, violin 1 and 2, viola, cello, bass. So it was a ton of work. It was the most labor-intensive part. I didn't have the complete books to the musicians until the 3rd week of rehearsals. I had just loose leaf music to start out because it was so much work. I hadn't even finished it by the time we started rehearsals. But we had 8 rehearsals to prepare about an hour of music. It was way more than I had ever tried to do before with the Youth Symphony. But I told them on the first rehearsal, this is going to be a lot, but this is also going to be one of the coolest performances you've probably ever been involved in your life. And I was not wrong about that. The seniors of this year's graduating class, 2020, they were juniors in their fall of their junior year when they played the ballet. And many of them who had been there said their favorite memory of the Canton Youth Symphony was playing this ballet. And it was, I was so thrilled to read that because so much heart and hard work went into creating it. And for it to have had a lasting impression on the kids that it was their favorite memory of their entire time in Youth Symphony, it was all worth it. And it was a most unique, incredible project I've ever worked on. And I'm so thankful to my collaborators, Nurjan and Zach, who brought it to life. And we made incredible art, and I'm thankful we got to do it. And I hope to get to do this ballet again at some point. It's already made at this point. Nurjan has his choreography and we have the music. I hope to do this one again at some point, as well as other projects like it in the future. So that's essentially how we created Alice in Wonderland. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure of the answer to this question, but did we video the production? Did that actually?
There is an archival video. This is another really interesting aspect of this. When we planned this, we planned for a full romantic orchestra. We assumed we would have a full romantic orchestra, but there actually were not a lot of kids auditioned for Youth Symphony that year. So for instance, we only had one French horn and we had planned for 4 and other things like that. On top of that, the performance conflicted with one of the high school's marching band competitions. So a high school that has a ton of kids that do Youth Symphony. So we were out the entire winds and brass of that school, as well as our recruiting just didn't go as well. So we had to hire a lot of musicians from the Canton Symphony Orchestra to play the ballet. And as a result, we cannot disseminate a copy of the video. Mm-hmm. I never even got a copy of the video. So I don't know. I know that it exists, but unfortunately it's not really available for public consumption.
Yeah, that's, it's just the problem with when there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved. There's a lot of ropes to jump through and just like little things. Is there, I know that we've talked about
just to clarify, it's a union regulation, essentially, that we can't disseminate it. Yeah.
So I know that we've talked about this, but like ideas for the future, I know you'd like to do another ballet again. But do you have an idea of what
I would definitely do another ballet again. I think what I would do this time around, Nurjan unfortunately isn't here anymore, so regrettably we'd have to find another choreographer, which would be very sad for me. But I think if we were to do something else in the future, I would want to take a ballet that already exists and essentially do an abridged version of it. It would be a lot less cutting and pasting of music to do it that. There would still be a little bit of that, but it would be a lot less of it. And I think still really cool for the kids and a lot of fun. So maybe if we can do Sleeping Beauty or something like that, Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty, it could be really cool.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Well, it is past 7 p.m. I didn't know if you had any final words, or Zach or Nurjan, if you had anything you wanted to say right before we finish out the session.
Not much. Just thank you all for having me. It was a real pleasure. And yeah, that was an amazing whirlwind weekend when this all came together. And I had the privilege of being there, and it's definitely a lasting memory. So looking forward to our next collaboration. And thanks, Matthew and all, for having me on.
Wonderful.
I would like to say thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for everything, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. But one thing, to dance with live orchestra, it's huge, and plus with real composer, this is a lot, and especially for kids. And you can search online. Nobody did in the world with live orchestra symphony and with real composer like as Zach, right? And to create ballet, I think we were first.
I think, yeah, it's really cool. It's something that I don't think happens a lot anymore, unfortunately, because of cost, but I think it's something that we should definitely invest in and keep doing, because live ballet with live music is always amazing. It's definitely one of my favorite things is to watch in the entire world. So thank you all for being here. We'll stay on for a little bit if you want to chat for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, but feel free to stay for a little bit and chat. And thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.
And by the way, the next installment of this series will take place in 2 weeks. And Zach will once again be on the panel. We have 3 composers joining us. Zach, Michael Spiroff, a dear friend of both Zach and I, also from Manus, as well as Daniel Pertu, who is a composer the Canton Symphony has commissioned to write a piece for our upcoming season. So the 3 of them are going to be on to talk about their compositional process. So we hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks for that.